Lebanon is a place with a high elite capture. There's a couple of oligarchs that rule most of the political economy of the country. When the financial crisis hit in 2019, I think that the need for alternative or independent media happened because the people needed to know, where the hell is my money?
Over 84% of media outlets in Lebanon are politically affiliated.
The battle is who will control the online narrative and how much the online narrative can influence people's hearts and minds.
There's a concept that's called the truth sandwich. You put in the two layers of bread are the facts, and then you slide in the lie. Unfortunately, we are in an era where truth doesn't matter anymore. People engage and like and trust content that is liked by other people in their communities.
Now, I'm going to touch on something that might be inflammatory. The name of Antoun Sehnaoui.
He's a banker. He owns lots of media outlets, and he is part of the oligarchs that we are speaking of.
He's just a prototype of the Lebanese politicians that we are trying to fight, not because he's Sehnaoui, but because he represents a kind of a cancer that came to the Lebanese state.
They came to us from the angle of who funds you. You are part of an international conspiracy. You are Zionists, you are Soros.
I'm usually very supportive of all our friends in the independent media sector. I do not think they played that part of the fight so well.
Welcome to what I believe is one of the most important editions of Real Talk. Before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to thank our loyal followers for your ongoing support. With countless podcasts available, we deeply appreciate you choosing Real Talk. Every fortnight, we strive to bring you thought-provoking guests and insights that empower you to make informed decisions and actively contribute to building a safer, fairer world for all. Today, in collaboration with Badil, the Alternative Policy Institute, we will discuss freedom of speech in Lebanon, the recent vilification of some of these media groups, and the pressure facing independent media. These media outlets, critical in exposing corruption and misconduct from governments, businesses, institutions, individuals, and foreign interests, face growing hostility from traditional media and the vested interests behind them. This issue extends beyond Lebanon. Worldwide, journalists have faced intense suppression since the Gaza war erupted on October 7, 2023. Notable journalists from the US, UK, Australia, and far beyond have been fired, silenced, or threatened for reporting the truth. Alarmingly, over 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza, the highest number ever recorded in a single conflict. An organised effort to silence journalists and controlling the perceptions, resulting in unprecedented levels of propaganda, misinformation, and disinformation. Public trust in mainstream media has collapsed, with many turning to alternative sources. Public media in Ireland, Germany, and Belgium are taking steps to combat misinformation through fact-finding initiatives, while upcoming elections in Canada and Australia reflect deep political divisions over funding for public media. Today's discussion will specifically address the threats to independent media in Lebanon, which represents a microcosm of the global struggle. With this situation intensifying ahead of the 2026 parliamentary elections, we have gathered some of the most respected independent media to examine the issues, discuss potential solutions, and ensure the public continues receiving accurate, relevant information. We also acknowledge our audience, including members from other media groups and stakeholders impacted by these challenges who have joined us in the audience today, and we'll take questions from you after we complete the initial discussions. But thank you all for joining us. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the guests seated with me today who will participate in this discussion. Starting with Nizar Ghanem, who is the Director of Research at Badil, our co-sponsors of today's debate. Nizar, thank you for your cooperation and collaboration today. Nizar's background, you've had more than a decade of experience in qualitative and quantitative research, economic development, governance and training, amongst a plethora of other achievements and qualifications. Our next guest, Diana Moukalled, I apologise if I'm pronouncing things wrong.
Correct.
The co-founder of Daraj Media. Diana is a prominent Lebanese journalist, documentary filmmaker and media consultant, known for her bold reporting on human rights, social issues and conflicts in the Middle East. Thank you for joining us, Diana. We're also joined by Ralph Baydoun, Director of InflueAnswers, a digital research and strategy communications firm. And you are yourself a strategic communications specialist, data analyst, and geopolitical commentator. Thanks, Ralph.
Nice to be here.
And finally, but no less significant, I would like to introduce Ayman Mhanna, Executive Director at the Samir Foundation. Ayman is a leading advocate for press freedom and independent media in the Middle East. Welcome, everyone. And it's a pleasure to host you, and I'm actually very privileged to be sitting among such notable journalists and fighters, defenders of freedom of speech, information, and the rights of all of us to speak freely. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to go around the table really quickly, just for you to introduce yourselves, just with a little bit more detail, so that people understand, especially the organisations, if you don't mind. So I'll start with you, Ralph.
Hello again. Thank you first of all, thank you for giving this space. I think it's really needed, especially that you cater to the diaspora, to the Lebanese diaspora. And the Lebanese diaspora has been, for the past 30 years, has been fooled and has been under a constant media manipulation in order for them to invest in Lebanon, just for them to see their savings vanish. So thank you for providing the space.
Tell us about you.
My name is Ralph Baydoun. I'm 33 years old, so my experience is a little less than the experts on the table. I work with Mr. Ayman Mhanna with Samir Foundation as a research company. We're close stakeholders. We analyze public opinion online, we analyze campaigns online, and due to my experience in the TV and the strategic communications, we're able to analyze the political communication and the why and how and to whom, like answer those questions, backed by the data of the research. We are witnessing an evolution in digital communications, and this is a new field that is understudied, and thanks to Ayman and thanks to organizations like Skies, we are able to, as practitioners, we are able to discover and study this field. And it's timely in Lebanon because it's being used. This space that was created after the Arab Spring, that was supposed to bring voices to the voiceless and to the people outside the establishment, right now is being hijacked by the same establishment.
We'll get into that.
So you asked.
But yes, definitely, we're going to dive straight into that. Thank you very much. Nizar?
My name is Nizar Ghanem, and I'm the Director of Research at Badil, the Alternative Policy Institute. Badil works as a hybrid model. We work as a think tank and a media outlet that combines basically analytical rigor with investigative journalism. We've been working since 2019, since the beginning of the financial crisis, and we really target a lot of political economy in Lebanon specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ayman.
I'm here representing the Samir Foundation. We're in 2025, 20 years after Samir's assassination. Samir was a Lebanese journalist, historian, and academic who was a very strong and vocal voice and pen, not only to defend Lebanon, but also to defend human rights, the Palestinian cause, the right of people across the region to live in real democracies. And probably this is what killed him. The idea that Lebanon can never be free, can never be democratic if its surrounding is not democratic. The idea that Lebanon can live as an island is something that he rejected. So he was a sovereignist in terms of supporting Lebanon's sovereignty, but at odds with the other sovereignists who didn't necessarily care about the freedom of Palestine and freedom in Syria. He believed that if we were to actually live in freedom, the entire surrounding has to be supportive of that freedom. So an ecosystemic approach to freedom. So our foundation is built on these same principles. This is why the first pillar of our work is safety and protection for journalists, for artists who dare to say things differently. So through monitoring violations against them, providing them with safety training, safe hosting, we try to help them, but also emergency support in case of crises. The second major pillar is the support for independent media and not alternative media. I'd like just to make this distinction, and we'll talk about it probably later. Not only through funding and training, but also through thinking of ways they can truly be sustainable and how we can also leverage the ecosystem, the private sector, the academia, the people who are here and who listen to us in support for people who respect their moral integrity in the news-making industry.
Arena.
And finally, we focus on research as well, because today the threat to freedom of expression is no longer only the police or non-state actors, it's also how the information ecosystem is weaponized by so many different actors. So we're here to also keep an eye on this.
Thank you very much. Diana.
Thank you. I'm Diana Moukalled. I'm a Lebanese journalist. I've been in the field for the past 35 years. In 2017, me and my co-founders of Daraj, we established Daraj Media. It's an independent media platform. We are based in Beirut, but we target the region. We cover stories from all over the region, especially when it comes to corruption, underreported topics like gender, freedom of speech, minorities, etc. We've been collaborating on several international journalistic projects, mainly investigative ones, and that brought us international recognition. And we are very proud to be one of the few journalists and media platforms that worked on corruption in Lebanon, especially after 2019, the collapse in Lebanon. I worked in mainstream media in the 90s. I graduated from Lebanese University. So I lived journalism in Lebanon in the post-war Lebanon. And we worked under the new formation of the country after the war, which was a kind of reconciliation. You have political regional powers controlling the country and also controlling the media. So working in mainstream media with limits, with ceilings that you have to be very watchful. Moving onward to 2011, after the Arab revolutions, after the technological revolution with smartphones, new media happening around us, and there were lots of opportunities. We saw lots of independent voices coming out. The idea of having independent platform came to us. And especially when we saw how the backlash of the Arab.
I want to get into that topic specifically. I have that question because I want to explain to everyone why the rise of independent media was necessary. So before you get into that, otherwise, anything else you'd like to add?
There are lots of things, but I'll stop it here.
Thank you. Let's get into the actual debate, and I'll just set the scene and start with, for context, the survey that the Samir Kassir Foundation released. I'm not sure how long ago, but it found that over 84% of media outlets in Lebanon are politically affiliated. Of them, 27% are directly affiliated to political parties. 5% were affiliated directly with the state, and around 60% of individuals who have been involved in politics or aspire to become politicians. Wow. Moreover, around 32% of the most popular media outlets surveyed were in the hands of at least 8 of Lebanon's most prominent families, and largely political families. Now, no one is confused about which traditional media organisations we're referencing here. I'm going to list them all, or most of them, the ones that I can list, so that we're very clear. Let's start with Radio Lebanon and Tele Lebanon. We know that they're the public broadcasting networks of the Lebanese state. Then you have the privately owned MTV, LBCI, OTV, Al Jadid, Al Manar, NBN, Radio Orient, Sawt Al Mada, excuse my pronunciations, L'Orient Le Jour, Al Nahar, Al Mustaqbal, Al Akhbar, Al Jamhuriya, Tele Lumiere, Noorsat, Lebanon 24, Al Diyar, Al Liwa'a, Nida Al Watan, Janubia, Al Bina'a, Radio Liban Libre, LebaneseForces.com, Voix de Liban, Al Noor, Sawt Al Shab, and Tayar.org. There probably are others, but these were from the sources I could identify. We did have the Daily Star and Future TV, which now folded, but we also have Beirut, which recently started. So if there's more, but generally you get the picture of who we're talking about. We're not saying that they're all bad, we're just defining them for you, that there is the traditional who've been around, and then you've got the independents that have arisen in the last 10 years or so. For clarity and transparency, the traditional media platforms we're referring to, who are all owned or have major shareholders, are either political parties, current or former politicians, and or their families. That's why we've defined them in that way. So there's a clarity. So getting into it, despite Lebanon having a reputation for decades, even before the war and during the war, of a free press, at least in the Middle East, today it ranks 140th out of 180 on the Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index. The biggest difference between countries like Lebanon and the UK, France, Australia, America, Canada, and the like, is that in those countries, the law specifically prevents members of parliament from owning or holding interests in media organisations and other corporations that might create a conflict of interest. And in most instances, if someone becomes an elected official, they must resign or transfer their interests from those organisations. In Lebanon, however, there are no legal provisions preventing members of parliament and government ministers or their family members from holding shares in media organisations, which is clearly where reform must begin, and makes complete sense why independent media outlets are necessary. Before I pose my first question to open this discussion, allow me to indulge with a famous quote by the great Mahatma Gandhi. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. The fact that a smear campaign and legal action are being taken against some independent media sources today, isn't it a clear indication that you're ruffling their feathers and that there is a shift in the media landscape in Lebanon, which, if they don't manage to subdue, could threaten some traditional outlets and their political, personal, and economic interests? Diana, I'd like to start with you by asking you to give us an understanding of the background and historical reasons behind the rise of media, independent media in Lebanon.
Well, I worked, as I said, in the 90s. Lebanon was governed by Syrian influence. And then there was an alarming incident to me. In the early 90s, the government wanted to suppress any objection against following the Christian leaders in the country, mainly Samir. So to suppress any opposition, the government then decided to impose a news blackout for 4 months. Televisions at that time were not able to broadcast news. To me, that was a moment of change, because I knew then what is it like to work when you have a limited ceiling, when you work in a mainstream media, that you cannot object or work outside the line, the editorial line. Since then, me and others as well decided, let's focus on things that we will not have any kind of censorship upon it. I moved to work on social issues, things that I am sure that the editorial line will not be challenging me. That kind of compromise moved on. I will jump till 2011. Something exploded in 2011. It's not only about it's about everything. It's about freedom of speech. It's about political rights. It's about economy. It's about everything exploded in Arab streets. And then we noticed how the backlash was severe. And the systems, the regimes tried to control also the narrative by buying or closing media outlets. We noticed after 2011,
in
big
Lebanon?
media in the region.
The whole region?
The whole region,
Lebanon?
including Lebanon. If you remember, there were several media outlets, including the one I used to work with, Future Television, was closed because the political funding stopped. So when you are a politically funded media outlet, then when the moment changes, you will lose your space. So those who decided to move on chose another key player to get funding. with this landscape, and also on the streets, you find people erupting, protesting, new voices coming out. Technology has become accessible and much more cheaper. So there was a chance. And then the idea of creating our own platform, independent platform, that would cover everyone, that we are outside the polarization. The whole region was polarized, and Lebanon included. So this idea of having independent voice that would cover the underreported topics came to us. And it's not only us. If you look at the region, the independent voices started to come out after 2011. And this is how we created Daraj. The idea came in 2015. In 2017, we managed to launch it.
And the revolution of 2019 gave rise to even more.
True.
More confidence, because before that there was a lot of people who felt, scared even to mention the names of their Zama, and they didn't even want to point fingers. But 2019 was the day of, October 17, 2019 was the day of real liberation. I felt, having been involved in producing my documentary from 2017, 2018, I was here and there was still this fear. And then 2019 I looked at it and I said, thank God that they finally spoke up. So thank you for that, that insight into that background for us.
Thank you.
Ayman, I want to go to you and ask you to clarify, in fact, is there a shift in the media landscape? Is that what's happening right now? And what caused it, and how does it bode for independent media in Lebanon?
Thank you. You refer to a survey, you called it a survey. It was a project that we called the Media Ownership Monitor. The numbers and examples you gave are actually from the 2018 version of the monitor. There is another version that was released in 2024 with updated numbers and another list, another sample of organizations. But the fundamental finding is the same. Before blaming media outlets for how and why they're acting in a certain way, there is a fundamental flaw in the business model of the traditional Lebanese media sector. And it's not recent. It's since the very beginning of the Lebanese media adventure, even when we had very bold and daring media outlets, the business model always was open and even kind of attractive to political funding. The fact that Lebanon in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s was the only place in the entire region where media outlets could exist and newspapers could be printed was actually also an attractive factor for regional powers to invest in the Lebanese media sector. Each major country in the region had a number of media outlets that they would invest in, fund, in order to promote a certain narrative. So in a way,
about Saddam Hussein,
Gaddafi, Assad, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Egyptians, like the entire spectrum. So nothing new under the sun in terms of business model. The real problem started when the Gulf-based media outlets started to invest in entertainment, because the entertainment business remained in the 1990s a Lebanese specialty. But when the big song contests and the big beauty pageants and reality TV shifted to the Gulf, this is where the real crisis hit from a purely business perspective. They can no longer make money out of advertisement and political funding. Advertisement disappeared. The economic crisis in Lebanon made advertisement even less profitable. So the only remaining source of funding was politics. So the media outlets that maintained some level of political support, whether from local businessmen involved in politics or from regional powers, these are the ones that survived, whereas those who lost their political patrons, either local or regional ones, are the ones who disappeared and closed. And when the alternative media scene emerged, at the time digital native ones, a lot of independent voices were there. But then nothing prevented the traditional forces to also invest in the online scene. This is why today we don't separate them between alternative, i.e. online, and traditional, meaning mainstream. No, today you have TV, radio, and print that are the traditional ones. Among them, I'll just single out the example of L'Orient Le Jour. Legacy extraordinaire. Like it's a 100-year-old newspaper in French owned by the political elite. So you have famous Lebanese families that have been involved in politics forever that still own it. Idde, Pharaon, the Frege, they were all involved in it. At the same time, the editorial line respects international standards of independence. Whereas other media outlets that may have absolutely no political connection but owned by pollsters or owned by others are built on the concept of we receive sponsorship from certain politicians to promote them, so they're not alternative. They're actually more legacy and mainstream, even though they use the online medium. So this is why our definition separates between editorial independent and politically co-opted or captured. So regardless of the medium through which these media outlets broadcast or publish their opinions.
And so that shift that's happening now is moving in which direction? We see the pressure because of the crisis or the awakening. Are you seeing people moving more to the independence and the...
People are moving more online. Now, the battle is who will control the online narrative and how much the online narrative can influence people's hearts and minds. So today, the online is the new battlefield, and you have inside that battlefield people from different perspectives. And the problem with it, especially online, is the noise factor and the echo chambers. So it's, if you're part of an echo chamber, whatever alternative idea will be presented won't necessarily break through your mental mindset. And at the same time, creating so much noise online prevents people from grasping what's at stake, especially bombarded with zillions of videos on TikTok, on Instagram stories. So their ability, because of the speed of how the online world functions, the ability to take just a second back to actually reflect and actually check what's in it for me is no longer there. And it creates blasé people, which is probably exactly what the traditional political and banking forces want. Blasé people rather than informed ones.
And that's a global phenomenon. That's what all politicians, leaders and also vested interests, wealthy individuals, and we're talking about, institutions like the Murdoch institutions around the world, Conrad Black when he built his empire in Britain around the world. They wanted to control the minds, they wanted to be kingmakers, and that's what's happening. Right now we see it shifting from an individual, as we've witnessed throughout the Palestinian, the war on Gaza, with more information being released, how the power of the mainstream media globally is in the hands of corporations and financial institutions like BlackRock, State Street and Vanguard, who control a lot. But we won't go into that. But that is why this debate here about Lebanon is a paradigm of what's happening globally. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to what Ayman said. Nizar.
Actually, I would like to add, maybe to place a bit the media scene within the political economy of the country. Because, the 2019 crisis, which basically we saw a meltdown of the financial sector and of all the state institutions, could not have happened without the media blackout before that, since 1990, which meant that you could sustain an unsustainable financial model because the media, the traditional media that was there, did not fill the vacuum. They were basically running the same propaganda piece run by the central bank in Lebanon and the oligarchs ruling the country. And this means that in political economy, Lebanon is a place with a high elite capture. There's a couple of oligarchs that rule most of the political economy of the country. And so without an independent media that can actually challenge the narratives, and when I say independent media, I mean investigative journalism. What Lebanon needed at that time is a rational discourse about our public policy. This did not happen. And so when the financial crisis hit in 2019, I think that the need for alternative or independent media happened because the people needed to know, where the hell is my money? Until today, there's not even one official in Lebanon, in the government, actually has a story to tell the Lebanese what happened in 2019. There's no discourse among the elites about what happened. They said at that time, it's a wada istisna'i, it's an anomaly.
We call our war the ahdath.
Yes,
If the war is called Ahdath, what do you expect for something like that?
So the media, what they call independent media, is a trial. It's actually the pushback of the Lebanese that lost their savings, that lost their country, to actually understand first and foremost what the hell happened. And so we have to place, in that sense, the media, the new media that was arising, and the pushback from the elites as part of this whole, trial to make the political economy of the country more open, more free, in fact. And this is exactly what Badil does, for example. We look at conflict of interests. We map certain value chains and actually send it to the people. You know, like, for example, who owns gas pumps in Lebanon? Who, for example? So we go deep into these value chains to actually let the common Lebanese understand the real function of politics. That is not about identitarian crisis, about a Muslim, Christian, or identity politics. It's actually about where the money is.
Well, I'm going to jump into the real focus of today's discussion and what brought us here, and that is the events over the past 6 or so weeks. We've seen a flurry of attacks on platforms, platforms like MTV and other random influencers, releasing reports and videos attacking Daraj Media, Megaphone and other independent platforms, including, I'm sure, Badil and Ralph, you've all copped it. And it was all centred around the nomination of the new governor of the central bank to replace the disgraced and currently jailed Riyad Salameh. Most, if not all, of the alternative media, as well as policy groups such as Kullina Irada, were opposing the candidate Karim Said. Whilst the traditional media, not all of them, to be fair, obviously not all of them, I mention, were in support of him. Nizar, we'll go to you on this just because of your background. What I'd like is to ask you to give us some background on this battle and why the independent media took such a strong position against Said, who has been appointed the governor of the Banque de Lebanon.
You know, before 2019, so since 1990 till 2019, can you imagine at the time of the financial crisis, there was $129 billion or something like that, like 120, 130 billion dollars in the Lebanese banks. These $130 billion went into public debt and corruption. This could not have happened without the central bank playing a role that is not in its TOR, that basically became an accountant for the oligarchs that rule the country. And now the resolution of this financial crisis lies basically in the central bank. Because if we want to actually now implement IMF reforms, we want to get people their money back, we need to understand at least how much money exists in the banking sector, how much money exists within the central bank, who was responsible. We need a proper public audit for the central bank and the banks. We cannot do that without a central bank, the head of a central bank that is cooperative, if you want, that is known for transparency. Karim Said is not. I mean, he's a collaborative. He's in collaboration with Miati, our old prime minister, who's an oligarch himself. He's accepted by most of the Lebanese oligarchs, like Nabih Berri and others, as a gatekeeper after Salameh, which means that he's not going to rock the boat in a manner that the independent forces, if you want, the change movement in Lebanon wants to see, which is some form of transparency and justice for the corruption that happened, that led to our financial crisis.
Why was he so strongly pushed by the President Joseph Aoun? He was...
Okay, so, I think that we have to accept that there's a balance of power between the old elites like Lebanon, at the end of the day, the change movement, we got what? I don't know, 13 MPs, 14 MPs maybe, or 12, depends how you calculate.
Yeah,
so we don't have that leverage in the system. We're talking about a system that is completely closed, elite capture. There's about 5-6 families that basically own most of the wealth in Lebanon, or business networks. And so I believe that, okay, we will not, as a change movement, get everything we want. You know, so the question is like, what are we going to get? That is the question. And I think that there is, among the banking elites in Lebanon, there are people who are going to, with the current reform that's going to be pushed forward, they're going to be bankrupt, of course. These are the ones that are pushing back. There are other bankers, by the way, that are with the change. They say, okay, I mean, we were willing to go with an IMF deal, we're willing to merge, because they know that they can recapitalize the banking system, their banks. So that's what's happening. It's actually a big fight between the elites about the nature of the future of Lebanon, the nature of the banking system, and who's going to foot the bill at the end of the day.
But going back to Karim Said, and you know, it was an interesting. I had conversations with certain people that I can't sort of name here, but his name wasn't what a lot of people wanted, including the American ambassador and Morgan Ortagus, Trump's deputy envoy to the Middle East. But there was pressure in America that from within America, whether it was what camps, but that convinced Trump to move ahead with him. But with that aside, he's now the governor, and some people have said, okay, let's see what he actually does. So, but this is the crux of the whole, fight, and why this, hijm, as we say in Arabic, يعني على independent media, this pressure.
If I may on this, Daisy.
Yeah.
And although I'm usually very supportive of all our friends in the independent media sector, I do not necessarily think that they played that part of the fight so well. I think there was this fixation on the name of Karim Said without enough proper research. Karim Said sponsored a reform plan that I would totally oppose. And most independent media exactly would also totally oppose, in my opinion, for the right reasons. However, equating Karim Said to Riyad Salameh on a lot of our friendly platforms, mostly like not the media outlets, but a lot of the digital platforms, was a mistake. No, they're not the same. Karim Said has public positions in support of the Alvarez and Marcel audit plan, public positions written on his own LinkedIn profile that we could have looked into, and denouncing specifically the fact that Riyad Salameh used to give money to some media figures. Like, it's something he's written. Why didn't we use it against those media figures who are today promoting him? Why didn't we push forward the idea that Nizar mentioned about the fact that no, the banking sector is not united. They give this impression of unity, but during not the last visit, but the just one before visit of the IMF delegation, there was a group of banks that met with the IMF and were ready for a plan. Why don't we highlight their names and show the difference between what they propose and what the rest of the banking sector proposes? Also, what Karim Said proposed, or no, sponsored in Harvard Plan is something that doesn't, where depositors, because their relationship will be directly with the state of Lebanon, will lose a lot of money, like a major haircut, which is not what the bank narrative is about in terms of protecting themselves. They just are happy with his plan because it shifts the blame to the Lebanese government rather than to the banking sector, but it's not the same thing as that they are presenting. Instead of having media outlets who would, in very simple terms, outline the differences in the different proposals and what it means for me as a citizen, as a depositor, as someone who has a family to feed and cater for, we went into this us versus them attitude, which further muddied the waters and the public understanding. So I hope that we're always nuanced and more critical towards our friends and those who are pursuing accountability in Lebanon when they don't do their job properly. I'm not expecting wonders from media outlets that are fully funded by some of the most corrupt businessmen and some of the most corrupt bankers. But I do expect better from those who are pushing for accountability. I think it was a major misstep. I hope we can do better moving forward.
I understand your frustration, but I think we, as part of the independent media, who were very skeptical towards Karim Said nomination, he wrote an article praising Donald Trump and announcing that we have opportunities in the region. He had some announced positionings that brought skepticism towards his policies. And the way he was adopted by the so-called, what we call it, the lobby al-masarif, the bank lobby, is also rose suspicions about his policies. And the way the president imposed him and defended him also raised more and more suspicion. I accept that the whole battle was not well managed, but I think the reasons to skeptic
are valid.
Are very valid.
Yeah.
If I may add here, if we're talking about the missteps, maybe not having, not uniting on a name to suggest, to counter Karim, maybe that was one problem.
But
also,
was there a name that you could have united
Yes.
against around?
Yes.
Right. Who was that?
There were few names on the table, but I think there was an inability. Exactly. And plus, you mentioned something about the lobbying in the States. Yes, you are right. This is what we miss as alternative media and opposition players. We do not have the funds, we do not have the resources to lobby as they do. And we'll talk about the lobbying factor later on, because we notice online the smear campaign that's happening against Daraj and Megaphone. There's a big chunk of those accounts that are created just for lobbying purposes, framing themselves as Lebanese Americans, Trump supporters, anti-Soros, just to
I'm going to get
to
you
push
to
for
talk
that
about
direction.
that in a minute. But just, so they're very important point. But let me just, one more thing.
Yes, which is, I would like to add on the, okay, so we cannot confuse also the media, the independent media outlets, and the political positions done by the change MPs. These are two different things. And many times the independent media in Lebanon also stands, for example, against certain independent MPs that do things that do not fit the, the
Best interest of
yes,
the country.
exactly. So what happened, I believe, is that the political battle among the change MPs, yes, was very quick. It was not well prepared. And the bank restructuring law, the indications from the prime minister and the president were not encouraging, because as we saw, the bank restructuring law that happened was very vague. So it added to the, if you want, the change base, the idea that something is being cooked up, and probably it is, that there's a negotiation happening between the elites that is not, and they wanted to push forward for a new central bank, head of a central bank that can like fit a more progressive credentials when it comes to social justice. But I think the backlash against independent media is not just because of that. It's kind of like Lebanon is starting a new phase, and there's a lot of things on the table. Not just the central bank. There's gonna now the gap. The financial gap law that is going to come out. There's a lot of things related to IMF reform, and Megaphone and Daraj and other independent media are an obstacle, because they actually do a good job in putting forward, and I know because we work together in terms of, like, for example, economists and independent media, in actually highlighting certain policy options for Lebanon. So the question is not about like just Karim Said, but it definitely is it's a good case, and it's a good case study, I think, yes, of why they do not like the independent media, which is basically they're pushing forward an agenda that is much more transparent for Lebanon. And again, I place it in the political economy. There's the vested interests. Who are the people now pushing against the independent media? They're oligarchs. They all have a vested interest in stopping an IMF deal that would actually open the books and show the rest of the people what's going on. So my response, for example, would be, yeah, let's have a proper audit. Let's have a transparent audit process. And this is a message to the Prime Minister and the President of Lebanon. You're saying that this is the right choice? Fine. Show us what are going to happen with the the banking secrecy law. Show us what you're going to do with the bank restructuring, and we're not going to accept that we're just going to follow blindly. Yeah.
I'd love to get into that topic, and there's a lot, and they did propose a new law, but we're not talking about that today. It's a very important topic, but let's stay on point here. Now, I'm going to touch on something that might be a bit sensational or inflammatory, but it's the name of Antoun Sehnaoui, bandied around by a lot of people. And I want to understand that, you know, not only this battle, but so many battles, he plays an important role. He's a major force. I mean, I keep hearing it from different people. He does fund a lot of media and politicians, and apparently donated to Trump's campaign. What's difficult is trying to prove any allegations against him or what his connections are, but maybe you guys have them. But I wonder if you might be able to shed some light on Mr. Antoun Sehnaoui, who owns the SGBL Bank, and
Antoun Sehnaoui is a banker. He claims to be a philanthropist. He also tries to promote himself as a cultural patron, funds movies, etc., part of the cultural scene. I personally started to hear of him like 10 to 15 years ago when he personally was engaged in a fight in one of Lebanese nightclubs. And since then, he hit someone harshly with his gangsters. And some of his gangsters later on were involved in either killing cases, assaults, and so many other issues. Besides his gangster group, and this is not, I'm claiming things, there are lawsuits against him, and he himself had to flee the country for some time. He's not in Lebanon at the moment because he doesn't have a clear judiciary file. I mean, he has some lawsuits against him because of this kind of physical aggression. Also, he's a banker. He owns lots of media outlets, and he is part of the oligarchs that we are speaking of. We in Daraj managed, after 2019, to disclose some of the wrongdoings related to Riyad Salameh, Antoun Sehnaoui, and other bankers. And we disclosed the relation between Antoun Sehnaoui and Riyad Salameh in enabling to transfer millions and billions of dollars outside and inside and outside Lebanon. And we published that. So we're not saying something in the air. We have proven documents regarding Antoun Sehnaoui and other bankers in the country. And this is a key issue why they are targeting us today, because they did not deny what we have published. They came to us from the angle of who funds you. You are part of an international conspiracy. You are Zionists, you are Soros, etc. But they did not deny what we have published. Come and tell us that the documents and the issues and the numbers that we have disclosed are incorrect. They didn't. They tried to move around and try to shed some lights around us as people, slandering, etc. And you are following what MTV is doing. So Sehnaoui is 2 years ago, and the surprise is what Al-Mhanna and the so-called resistance axis and the so-called independent axis are using the same methods. In 2020, Al-Akhbar newspaper started this attack against independent media by labeling us towards Soros. And at the same phase, IC Beirut, which is owned by Antoun Sehnaoui, also drew this article that was widely distributed, connecting all the so-called Soros conspiracy, and many of the issues mentioned in it were wrong. Also, trying to draw this skepticism around our role. Today,
misinformation.
Purely misinformation, purely wrong information towards the people, and injecting money. You know, the banking system have invested in TV shows like the ones of MTV, Marcel Ghanem, when he was in LBC and then moved to MTV, and other TV shows. If you look at those stations in the past decade, you will see lots of ads for those banks in particular. And they used to promote the narrative of the banks, the so-called financial engineering that drove us into the collapse in 2019, were presented by these TV shows as a savior to Lebanese economical system. And this is the only way, and those videos are still available online. So it's something that was built years ago, and today we are seeing the other backlash by the same group, by the same mainstream media and figures, to defend the oligarchs and defend the bankers, to evade any accountability, to evade any proper reconstruction of the Lebanese finance.
Anyone else want to contribute on that?
I think Diana said most of the. Sehnaoui is not, he's a prototype. He's a prototype of the kind of Lebanese politicians that grew out of the Ta'if state in 1990, which is basically, to my mind, is also had a European backing. There were like 4 international conferences that brought billions of dollars to a broken system that ended up in the pockets of people like Sehnaoui. So he's not like, for me, he's just a prototype of the Lebanese politicians that we are trying to fight, not because he's Sehnaoui, but because he represents a kind of a cancer that came to the Lebanese state. And we want a new banking system like the banking system we had for more than 100 years. A thriving a banking system that invests in actually a productive economy, in the Lebanese industries, rather in public debt and corruption. So the question is not personal at all. He's going to, of course, make it into a personal fight, and this whole conspiracy and misinformation. But I think that what we are betting eventually, and what everyone should bet in Lebanon, is in rational discourse. Meaning, okay, you have evidence, bring it to the table like we're sitting here, and let's discuss the policy options. There is no need to go name calling, because if you're going to name call, we can name call back at you.
He's a champion.
I'm a champion of that. So,
just to give some perspective, the banks have invested almost more than $1 billion in ads between 2012 to 2021. And that was a proven document published by professionals. So if you look at the amount of money that is being invested in televisions to promote the narrative of the banks, of the central bank governor at that time, you will understand the amount of how people were misled to reach the 2019 collapse.
And look, I was in Australia in 2017, and we were visited. I was invited to several events with banks from Lebanon, coming to try and get the diaspora to invest in Lebanon, and the high interest rates that you would never find anywhere else. It was like too good to be true. And my dad said it's too good to be true, so I listened to my dad, thank God. Others didn't, but a lot of people lost millions and millions of dollars. And yeah, this was the marketing and the PR show that they took around the world. I witnessed it firsthand. So, okay, he's, as you said, Nizar, just an example of one of the profiles or the identities that, could be part of the oligarchs, part of the political elite that want to continue what they've been benefiting from for the last 3 or 4 decades. And they're part of a system that the independent media, that reformists, that people who believe in an opportunity to change Lebanon do not agree with. And yes, I mean, it's understandable that there's going to be a big fight, and they, depending on what comes up in the next year with the elections, it could be a fight for their life, but I think we'll get to that later on. It could be a fight for, reform and change for Lebanon as well. Let me go into the topic of the dissemination of disinformation. And Ralph, I want to bring you into this because this is your specialty. But I want to set the scene. It's like, I want to discuss the impact of social media on the truth and how it's used to spread disinformation. But it seems like, as you've all said, it seems every man and his dog, as we say in Australia, opens an Instagram account and suddenly they've decided that they're a journalist and they have an opinion and they purport to be one. So those of us who are journalists who've done the time and the training to earn that title can distinguish the difference, but the average person, the layman in the street, doesn't. And this is a big problem, as we've seen. They don't follow any rules. There's no fact checking. There's no proof, no references, just accusations, and they tend to get away with it. Whereas organisations such as independent ones with rules that follow get hit and gets slammed with legal suits and whatever. The bad thing is they are able to influence people and are influencing millions of people, if not billions, especially in the last year or so with the shift with Gaza. For Gaza, it's been a phenomenal thing for the Palestinian cause. But, you know, when we look at our problem here, it's not so good in some instances. They look good. They just need to sound good, look good, and be able to cleverly pull together some half-truths into a story. And I want to focus on one lady. I don't know her personally, but I got sent her videos. She goes by the handle of Whistle Leb Blower, Nadim Barakat, I think she is. Watching her videos, if you didn't know better, you'd believe her. She makes a very strong case. She gives you some facts. And recently part of this focus of the governor of the central bank really came out hard against Kulina Irada, Daraj, Elan Bafani, you know, and threw in the accusations of the George Soros funding them, and, you know, he's this, you know, leftist, rightist, whatever you want to call him. And so I met so many people here in Beirut, educated people. And then I had so much contact with a lot of people in the diaspora who were saying, oh my God, this, okay, hello, like, you know, take a breath, and do you really believe this? What are the sources? You have to assess the information and where they're getting that information. But that's what I say, they do have impact, they're having an influence, and it's, you know, quite shocking. But to see how we get to deal with this, because then, you know, we are trying to present a truth, we're held to a different standard than they are. So coming back to you, and there's, you know, accusations not only against the media organisations, the reformist MPs, Change MPs, Paul Kubian gets it all the time. Even the new Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, has been, you know, accused of connections with Hezbollah. I'm just throwing this all in, all of the rumours, because I want to bring this into this question and ask you if you can provide us some, you know, real insight from the studies that you do and looking at social media influencers. Are they lone wolves? Are they part of an organised network put to action when, you know, the threat is increasing against certain groups? Tell us about that and let us, you know, understand from everything you've studied how these operations work. It's relevant to Lebanon, but this is, again, an example being mimicked all over the world.
To answer the last part of the question, has it always been a part of a network, or they were lone wolves? Basically, we are now understanding the scope of this network. A few minutes ago, you mentioned that the accumulation of this campaign came with the battle of the central bank governor. I say the accumulation of this campaign happened when Nawaf Salam got nominated. I think that was the element that changed the whole plan. Miate was was the front runner. He was de facto going to be nominated. And this Nawaf Salam that got parachuted changed the whole game. This is why we started seeing the full scope of this machine materializing online and on mainstream media. There's a theory, I always like to talk about this theory about how do people adopt an idea. It's called the two-flow stream of communication. So in order to believe in an idea, you have to hear it, first of all, on mainstream media, and then it has to be verified by a macro social influencer. It can be you, it can be your family, it can be your colleagues. And this is what's been happening. So it happened, so first you have to zoom out of this one narrative that targets the bank, that talks about the banking, and start analyzing the full conversation. What is the story this mainstream media that is trying to sell us? By mentioning the gold reserves. Okay, maybe if you see this news as a standalone piece, maybe you don't understand what's the motive behind this, you know, reporting on the gold reserve for the past 2 years. So by zooming out, you understand the full story. So they're trying to promote one thing. If you analyze the conversations on Sar al-Waqt in the past 2 years, you can clearly identify that the conversation is an anti-IMF conversation. When you put all those pieces together, then you can understand, okay, what's the motive? The motive is to go into that direction to exempt the part of the bankers. I would say, I hate the word banking lobby, by the way. I would say there's a cartel. Part of them are bankers, politicians, because everybody used the system and everybody abused the system. So, going back to influencers on the fringe influences on social media. Basically, what started, there's a concept that's called the truth sandwich. Did you know it? So you put in the two layers of bread are the facts, and then you slide in the lie or your agenda in between. And
that's right.
Basically, misinformation or disinformation is not a blatant lie. It's that. I'll tell you a little bit of truth. I'll give you some information that is right, but then I'll secretly slide my agenda. I always, when people ask me about influencers or whistleblowers or media personnel, I always ask them, please ask this person, what do they do in real life? How do they earn their money? I see people jumping from one television to another, giving one statement to another. How do you earn a living if you're always on TV? And that's the first question that we need to ask ourselves. So, unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, we are in an era where truth doesn't matter anymore. People engage and like and trust content that is liked by other people in their communities. So if I see Ayman liking a post, I will immediately think that this is because we're aligned. I would immediately trust the source. So my critical thinking shuts down. And this is what's happened with the influencers on Twitter who are supported and liked and shared by other members of the society who are part of this network. So,
are they organized? Is it?
Okay, have you seen this clip that puts all the American TV stations and shows you this one sentence, the same sentence being repeated?
Yeah, they've been given a script and they're putting out the script.
I can give you, just by analyzing the content of political shows, I can give you the list of people who are repeating the same sentence, same propaganda, sometimes without even, there's a Lebanese saying, حافظ مش فاهم. You've memorized without really understanding the lie that you're about to sell. You're about to sell me. So
they're being paid.
So okay. If you're an avid, if you're a media monitor, like the ones here on the table, Lebanese TV shows are like entertainment, okay? And because usually the host and the guest know each other, sometimes they try to slide some information to make, to annoy the other, It's a
game.
It's a game.
Yeah, they're putting on a show.
And
they know their roles.
Exactly.
So they've all come on with a particular role to play just for the audience.
Exactly. So, for instance, I recall one scene when Walid Aboud was interviewed on one of the Ramadan shows 2 years ago. He was asked why he exited MTV, why he resigned from his role from MTV. He was the editor-in-chief, right? And he said because Antoun Sehnaoui brought Marcel Ghanem. So sometimes they slide some information. People like us capture it and build the network. It's over time when you see how this game is being played. In another opportunity, there was a show, and the host asked what's his name? Khayoula Joseph Abu Fadil. Simon. Are you friends with Ibrahim Kanaan? And the other guy, he didn't want to answer give a straightforward answer, and the host immediately tells him, "But he's a sponsor on your website."
So who is Ibrahim Kanaan?
Ibrahim Kanaan is
a member of parliament.
He's responsible for a lot of the financial.
He's the head of the budget committee, chair of the budget committee.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So, and he's in the Free Patriotic Movement. So
he was.
He was. Sorry. Yeah. Now the new party.
Yeah.
So from those details, you know how this game is being played in Lebanon.
The spider's web.
There's a free expression in Lebanon, but very little free voices. You know, the model, as Ayman mentioned.
That's a very good point. A very good distinction. Free expression, but not really free voice.
What Ayman mentioned about the model of the media outlets, they're paid. I give you $50,000. You'll have to cover my activities and my version of the story for the full year. Okay, so once you analyze, you experience those media outlets in different political junctures. Okay, you have this battle right now. You have this battle next week, and you observe their statements and their agenda on every political junction. And this is why you have Diana here. This is why Jean Assir is under attack. This is why, like literally, they're attacking civil society because it's the only pushback against this establishment. They're the only free voices. I'm sorry, guys, but this is, unfortunately, this is the situation.
No, it explains a lot.
Civil society, and I'll take a pause here, parenthèse صغيرة. You know, it's been 10 years I've been working in the civil society field. And up until now, I find it hard to explain. I find it hard. Like, I see that my friends don't even know how to explain what I do. The notion of civil society or civic work is not mainstream in Lebanon. They don't know what it is. We all have a different approach. Maybe we didn't learn civic education at school. We all went to different schools, and we didn't have a unified, vision on that. But basically, if you want to work for the public interest without getting political money, without bending the knee, what is your options? What are your options? You either have to ask for public donations from Lebanese people inside and in the diaspora, or you have to apply for foreign funds. I'm assuming you both have grant acquisition teams that search for grants opportunities from Open Society, from the State Department, from the FCDO. Lebanon, as a state, lives on foreign funding. Our Lebanese armed forces are funded by the US government, $195 million. The FCDO, I think maybe the FCDO.
With a strong role in the police.
$22 million in the past 3 years in aid.
So how can we have independence or sovereignty?
Our heritage, I don't mind as long as it's for the public good. If you have good teams, honest people who use this loop in the system, which is, to get tax cuts and to maybe use the soft power influence of certain countries to achieve good things for Lebanon, I don't mind. If the Italians want to support, to renovate Baalbek site,
Ahla wa
sahla, I don't mind. But to put it right now, to put the equation, to change the question from where is my money to who's funding you? That's the whole game. And if you repeat it long enough, people are going to repeat this.
They're trying to make people forget their own money and make them focus on where you're getting your money, so that shifts the debate.
2 days ago, we were in the Palais de Justice, Qasr al-Adl. A woman came next to us and told us, you guys raised the dollar to 100,000 liras. This is the power. This is the power of social media, power of repetition on mainstream media, and then you see it verified and validated on social media, and that's an atomic bomb. And this is what's gonna kill the internet, I think.
I love what you said, but what worries me more is when you see the judiciary falls into that trap. When we find ourselves being questioned and the judges and the general prosecutor taking seriously that we in Daraj or in Megaphone stand behind the financial collapse or behind the whole conspiracy thing. I think this is what's alarming. I agree, I fully agree with all what you said, and you said it beautifully. But this is part of a global trend. We see it in Trump. We see it also here in the region. Egypt used to demonize all those who get any political funding. Also happened in the Gulf. It's happening around us. But Lebanon was, or we used to think, or we wanted to believe that we are an exception. No, we know today we're not. If we don't stand up and fight and explain exactly what is international funding and how does it work and what is transparency, and tell the people what you have just said. And to me, we have to tell that first, not before the people, we have to tell it to the judiciary. We have to raise the awareness among some judges who are still questioning. Really, I don't want to describe what they have asked yesterday or before, but I think what we have witnessed in the past couple of weeks is alarming, not only from the people perspective, but also from the Ministry of Justice.
I've got to move this debate along.
Can I just add one more comment for listeners here? There are papers published right now about the effect of social media on judges.
Yes.
I would like to see it.
And there's another documentary called Who Trolled Amber? And this is the case of Johnny Depp's ex-wife. And they describe it beautifully, how judges were affected by the social media campaigns that were launched prior to the.
It's happening here. I'm 100%.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a quick answer from you because I know that your foundation, and then I want to go back to you for a minute, but on the foundation conducted an investigation into the smear campaigns, and could you give us a summarised answer to go on with what Ralph told us about the organised structure and how they built this? Because your investigation was very
Ralph
interesting.
described it very well, and it's nothing new in terms of how it works. So the mechanism is always the same. There are accounts that are created, fake accounts, but that embody real people that are created at any given moment in time. These accounts remain dormant or publishing random stuff that are not necessarily very interesting and with very little, a number of followers, very small number of followers.
They could be 10 years old.
Exactly. And they're not totally created in a way that can be detected because they don't necessarily use just a series of numbers and letters for their username, but actual real persona. So there's some kind of social engineering over there. And sometimes with mistakes, and probably the mistakes that were made recently were the kind of hook that led us to actually look more into it. By finding out that a lot of the people who were repeating the same slogans and the same things had the same profile picture while having different names and different biographies. So we started digging more into these profile pictures to find out that they were taken from, for example, a random LinkedIn account for someone in Greece or France, or even from dating apps. So we started looking more into it to realize that there is quite a mimetic way of behaving, of content. These people don't necessarily influence hearts and minds because they only have 500 followers even at the peak of their strength. However, they serve as amplifiers, echo, for some influencers who are, for example, using it first or saying it first. So their role is to amplify the message, to give the impression that there is a majority that is organically supporting a certain point of view. And why it's influential is what was very well described by Ralph. But at the same time, the moment for some reason the agenda shifts, suddenly it's like those who like French cooking know the souffle. The souffle might completely die in the oven if suddenly you don't keep feeding it the heat that it needs. And it's not the first time we see this in Lebanon. We've seen it over so many campaigns, and there is a very strong parallel with the Hezbollah methodology online around, for example, Luqman Slim's assassination. So they're not using the same accounts, but they're using the same actors and the same methodology. So, for example, on Luqman Slim's assassination, a character was created, presented as an author whose articles are published in a number of international newspapers. an Iraqi journalist. And all these newspapers and online media outlets are all directly funded and owned or by the IRGC. But she's been publishing articles about Luqman Slim being an Israeli agent in the months that preceded his assassination. The moment Luqman was assassinated, suddenly all her articles surfaced using the same model of accounts that were dormant for many, many years and spreading news to shift the question again from who killed Luqman to was Luqman a traitor? So this became the kind of model for the conversation. And so the same approach using different accounts is today applied to smearing, for example, those who are calling for accountability. So there is nothing new under the sun. The problem here is that we need to test how much they have influenced people's opinion. I'm still hoping that they created doubt, that they led people to stop believing anything and have becoming suspicious over Daraj, Megaphone, and others. But I do not believe that these accounts have added any credibility to the media outlets attacking them. So what the attackers are not gaining is credibility. What they are gaining is
Your loss.
popularity, but also mainly confusion. And confusion that would
want.
prevent people from making informed choices.
That's what they want.
But this is important.
Exactly.
This is a question for MTV and the banks. Let's say that the bank lobby, and specifically the most corrupt people in that lobby, in that cartel, eventually get away with murder and get away with what they did. Will trust in the banking sector in terms of depositing money and actually seeking credit from Lebanese banks resume?
No.
Maybe not. MTV, with that campaign, unfortunate campaign, because MTV was a victim of attack on freedom of the press.
And we defended.
Absolutely.
And
MTV
everybody defended.
has every right to go to take it to the court against people who are calling for murder for MTV anchors. But seeing MTV do this, will it ever regain credibility among the people that used to actually listen to MTV as well, but who are not necessarily ideologically aligned with it right now? So is it really worth it? Lose credibility to that level, both the bank and MTV, just to smear people who are just calling for accountability? So this is today something that would truly define how we deal with media and every one of our other sectors for the years to come.
It tells you how much the stakes are high.
Yeah, that's right.
On this
You know what? It will be defined as something as simple as this. Right now, the MPs are sitting in Parliament. To discuss the bank secrecy law and soon the bank restructuring law with all its flows. It all boils down to one simple article. Will the
10 years or
new administrators of the banks be able to look at what happened at potential crimes perpetrated in the last 10 years or 5 years? This whole campaign will stop there. The moment the MPs vote for a 5-year term, you can be sure
Failed.
that everybody will forget about us and forget about the campaigns that have been
succeed.
launched.
It's another topic, but
the same one,
we've
actually.
run out of time. But I do need to ask you one more question, because the case that you're enduring now, it's a legal complaint against Daraj and Megaphone, is a very serious one.
Several legal complaints.
Right. So
Two by Antoun Sehnaoui.
okay.
Marwan Khairuddin.
Marwan Khairuddin.
I don't want to go into them right now, but what I want to discuss is if they succeed, if the public prosecutor agrees that they have a case against you and other independent media.
That means that we stand behind the financial collapse and the crisis. So, well,
What do you mean?
I mean, if
That's what the case
this
is
is a
about.
case is about.
That you are responsible?
Yes.
For the financial collapse?
Yes.
Of course.
So they're not accused, sorry, I mean sorry.
You're responsible for the collapse of the country,
Not accused.
financial...
Exactly, they're not
Undermining
accused
the
of
state.
slander and defamation, which would be something typical and expected.
Right.
They're accused of actually being the reason for why the country has collapsed. And I always,
Economy, the collapse.
on 8th of October 2019, 8th of October, so not
Wow.
19th,
Economist.
exactly, a number of lawyers, unknown lawyers, similarly to what happened right now, asked Lebanon to ban the import of The Economist, the magazine, because it wrote about Lebanon being on the brink of collapse, and this would undermine people's trust in the national currency on the 8th of October 2019. Wow. We forget about this. If they're responsible, but you told us that it was The Economist that was responsible. How was the blame shifted from The Economist to Daraj and Megaphone?
To a couple of media outlets who don't have any proper funding and, doing this.
But they do, but this is not an issue.
I mean, not to the same comparison.
There's no legal founding for the case. It's just to distract attention, to reach the real goals like the one what's happening in the parliament at the moment.
Right.
They are trying to make us busy, being challenged, trying to answer all those unrealistic questions. But they are distracting the public from the real issues that are at stake.
And that's what they're supposed to do. That is their role. But looking at this, taking this, and in summary now, looking at what's happened now, we know that this is only the beginning. I mean, as you said, Ralph, it's not the beginning. It started a long time ago with Nawaf Salam, but also well before that. But we're leading into an election year, parliamentary elections 2026, hopefully May. I know we've got municipal elections, which might be a testing ground. But what do you see for your organisations and your platforms and outlets with the elections coming, because this is possibly 2020 the most important elections, even more than 22 were, for change, for reform, for the hopes and dreams of the Lebanese here, but also in the diaspora who have, given everything for Lebanon. The diaspora has funded Lebanon to the tune of 40% of GDP for decades, but they really believe in Lebanon. They love Lebanon beyond your understanding. And they are so committed to change. They voted and were a large reason for the Change MPs that were elected in 2022. But what is the battle ahead for you, and what is the battle ahead for those who believe in a future for Lebanon where it means our people live in dignity, our children can stay here and work and live and thrive, because that's the dream that we all want and believe is possible, and that they sold us with Joseph Aoun becoming president, Nawaf Salam, and this new government. We really believed, our hopes were lifted.
Go ahead.
I don't think that the current government and the current president are they're actually a positive. They could not have happened without also the push of the Change MPs, the push of the whole demonstrations in Lebanon. There's a structural problem in the whole economy and state that has to be rectified. So I'm not necessarily in that sense, in opposition to the president and the prime minister. There are certain files that we're opposed to in the way that was handled, and that's democracy. We have our right to disagree. Now, what's going to happen in the next elections? It remains to be seen. I think that it's going to be a mixed bag. Partly because also I think the people expected a lot from the Change MPs, and the Change MPs are like 12 MPs, 13 MPs that could not sway the balance of power inside the parliament or the balance of power inside the elites. So what I say is the battle is a long one. We cannot just say that so for me change happens incremental. If I look at Lebanon in 2016, I was leading demonstrations on a Youth Stink movement. We had nothing. We didn't have any independent media. We had no MPs. We had no. We were just a bunch of kids basically on the street, and nobody took us serious. If you look just 10 years after that, we have a parliamentary bloc. There are independent media. There's quite a. If I come from 2016 to the future now, I'd be like, oh my God, I would never have expected that this.
Could we go backwards? Could we go backwards is the question, because if they rise again, the traditional parties and the fight that we're seeing, they are going to come after change in a very serious manner.
There's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is economics is like physics. It's they cannot escape the fact that the banking sector is bankrupt, and the fact that they spent $130 billion in corruption. Where are they going to get the money from? So it's impossible. They have to change something. And the banks,
From the gold.
yeah, so they can kick the can, but
Yeah.
they cannot kick the can more. And this is why they're angry. They're angry because they know that the change is coming and there's going to be a bank restructuring. It might not be to the level that we want. We're going to try to push as hard as possible to get the best deal there is for the small depositors, for the people, for the syndicates, for the insurance, for the common people of Lebanon. But the bad thing is, of course, they're going to try to get the future of Lebanon. And that's the battle now. The battle is not on the past. They've already liquidated billions of dollars. The question is about the goal. The question is about what kind of Lebanon we want for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
That's what's at stake right now. It's hard, but as I said, I mean, I always say the optimism of the mind, the pessimism of the mind, the optimism of the will.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm going to go around and just finish that final comment. 1 minute, if you can, because our audience is waiting to ask questions.
So basically what Nizar mentioned about the future of Lebanon is important. The gold reserves will determine, like we have a good amount of gold. We could use this to invest in the youth, in the future, in Lebanese startups, in a certain sector. We have the opportunity to transform the Lebanese economy from what it was to what it could be. And it's important we keep our eye on this battle. One last note, what to expect in the next year, what to expect. Diana mentioned how much money the old cartels spent on convincing people to participate in this Ponzi scheme, to bring their money and put them in Lebanon. $1 billion is 1 billion. What's $100 million if they were about to lose, billions? It's nothing. So you've got this cartel from one side, who right now their interests are meeting Hezbollah's interests, which also uses this corrupt financial ecosystem to sustain its operation. Imagine Hezbollah used to get around $1 billion per year. This funding used to be spent on salaries and on hardware, on equipment. Right now, they can transfer this hardware money to soft power, to media. So you're going to see a rise in Hezbollah narrative and the cartel narrative, who are meeting against our future. And what we need, first of all, thank you for providing this space, because we need more spaces like this. We need more, we need the voices of those civil society actors be heard with the diaspora, and we need the diaspora to break this cycle. Do not follow the same parties and groups that convinced you to put your money in Lebanon.
Yeah.
So you have to understand this. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, Lebanon is not an island. We just lived like an earthquake in the region, from Gaza to a regime fall in Syria, and of course what happened in Lebanon and the war in Lebanon and the whole changes that we've been through. So I think we have to look at the coming elections as a very important stage, but not necessarily the end one. It's a long way to move on. So we have to have really the will to fight for the country, and I'm not trying to throw slogans. From where I stand, I'm a journalist. We in Daraj will keep doing what we have been doing. We will not stay aside or
off in any way.
No, we will keep doing and disclosing wrongdoings whenever we can. And I think this country deserves to be given more chances. Look at the world. The whole world is in crisis. I think there is something that we should defend when we look at Lebanon. And it's a worth defending country. And I think standing to what is right is essential from wherever we are standing.
Definitely. Thank you. Ayman, last word.
No. There are opportunities for 2026, but also challenges. Opportunities. First election without Hezbollah being as powerful as it was. If this is not a tectonic shift, I don't know what would be. And not realizing that this is an opportunity and organizing accordingly would be the mistake of those who don't realize it. Second major element is that maybe the change that we sought in 2022 through the legislative branch will be more effective today that at least it is also represented in the executive branch. So how would smart parliamentary, so legislative and executive strategies be built is something possible. Today, each one of the new ministers, including the Prime Minister, have very smart chiefs of staff, advisors who are part of the movement that we were talking about. A way to smartly coordinate with them is needed, even if, and this is what will bring me to the challenges, even if they don't do exactly what we asked for in 2016 or 2019 on the streets. So this pragmatism is what I'm calling for, and I know, unfortunately, that a lot of challenges will come from within those who seek revolutionary purity, those who cannot accept any kind of compromise. Today, compromise will save Lebanon. Revolutionary purity, just because we need to be perfectly aligned with this extremely ideological point of view, will destroy us all, because those who can get away with games and compromises all the time are the bad guys. We know compromise, and French compromis is a very good word. Compromission is a horrible word. So we can make these compromises without compromising our values and ethos. And this is something essential. So I'm warning first against radical forces from within us. So this is a very important point, because one thing, people hate losers. If we go to the election as we're running for office because we're unhappy, because they didn't do what we wanted, because everything is bad, they're not good, Nawaf is not perfect, and the president is not perfect, etc., we will lose. Because people vote for those they believe will win.
Yes.
So you have an Austrian prime minister who was kicked out of power because his party, not even himself, faked the opinion polls by showing that they are slightly stronger than the opinion polls showed, because the courts considered that this gave a message that the party is stronger than it is and attracted, therefore, more votes.
Yeah.
So if we go with the mindset of purity and not accepting any compromise, and we're losers because they didn't do everything we want, and with an upsetting point of view, with no hope, no sense of hope and vision and joy and enthusiasm, we're doomed.
Yeah.
So it's not a lost cause, and it's not an easy one, but let's get ready.
Thank you very much. A great way to finish off this debate. I've really loved debating with you and talking to you and negotiating compromising on our views as well. Now we want to hear from our audience.
Hi, I'm Hala Nasruddin. I'd like to just go back to the question that Daisy asked but wasn't really answered. Why did the president propose the governor, the current governor of the Central Bank? If you're saying his position is aligned with those who are fighting IMF reforms and therefore change and accountability, then why is the president that we are hoping is going to bring reform is the one who designated the new governor of the Central Bank? And secondly, for the radicals of Lebanon, you're right, we need to focus on that and to focus on, we don't want a complete revolution, correct? However, when you look at history, we keep repeating ourselves. We just replace one country with another. So we are at a juncture today. Do we want to replace Iran with Israel? America and Israel are not separate. And when you're saying you want to hold on to your values, foreign money doesn't come free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So would you be willing to compromise at the expense of your values? And do you think with the new banking system that's going to be proposed, are we going to be turned into a completely overregulated, controlled economy and society, where with digital currencies and all the other things that will be incorporated like European and American banking system, it's really about control.
Thank you, Hala.
Yeah.
Because they're too long, they're two important, very important questions. I'm very glad you asked them. On the point of the president, who would like to answer that, respond?
No, I absolutely don't have any information, so it's speculation. I think one of the very important factors, and it echoes a little bit the issue of the stronger US influence in Lebanon when it comes to the army's role and other security and airport. I think while Morgan Ortaga spoke about the importance of both the disarmament of Hezbollah and reforms, and this is an important thing. At the same time, it is fair to say that, in terms of, weight, there is more weight for the Hezbollah point of view. I think any candidate for the central bank governorship who gave stronger commitments to completely destroying or attempting to destroy the financial system of Hezbollah was probably favored. Karim Said wrote in September op-eds that are extremely opposed to Hezbollah, so that's not new. At the same time, there are elements related to monitoring, including in the banking sector, all the money that could have gone to Hezbollah. The fact that you have exchange bureaus and money transfer agencies that were used, and actually Riyad Salami is under sanction for facilitating access to Hezbollah to some of the financial systems. Anyone who would have on his agenda completely cleaning up that part to further asphyxiate Hezbollah financially would have the US support, rather than what is his view regarding whether the haircut would be at 80% or 60%. This is an internal Lebanese debate that doesn't interest anyone in the US.
Yeah. And the point on the influence of America and Israel and, their values and...
Absolutely. The values are very, very important. I'm just now describing the situation as it unfolds today after a destructive war that completely changed the way the region is built. And today, the negotiations happening in Oman or soon in Rome are also in a way to assert the new power balance in the region.
The question that was asked about, Lebanon's economy was 50 billion. Now it's like about 28. It's with
the grey economy slightly.
With the informal and black, you're probably like at 28 billion, right? Yeah. Okay, 28 billion compared to an economy like Israel, which is like about 300 billion, basically, like Emirates. Okay, if we have any form of normalization or peace with Israel, we will be the backyard of and who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for that is the same political class and bankers who destroyed the foundation of Lebanese economy.
And Hezbollah.
And Hezbollah, of course.
Yes.
And Hezbollah, for sure. And now we have a chance. We've got a big hegemonic, basically, I would say even cancer, in Lebanon. That is the Iranian influence. Okay, it's taken out, right? But what are we going to replace it with another influence that is as, or even more? This would lead to instability in the future. This would lead to civil war, fracturing. It would lead to a devastation of Lebanon like Somalia. No, we cannot have that. We need to have a political consensus inside the country, but also we need to establish the new economy on a solid basis. And what are the solid bases? Is that we cannot replay again the same bubble, financial bubble that actually led us to this. In fact, I would say, okay, if they're talking about conspiracies, what happened to 2019, the demolishing of the banking sector, is their conspiracy. If it was a conspiracy, then they helped do it. Because where did you spend the money instead of building a true economy? That is what is at the table. And this is, I think, what the change media, but also like political forces are about, is about how to protect Lebanon even from that, how to protect Lebanon in terms of sovereignty, security-wise, but financially.
Thank
Also,
you.
if I may add...
Great question.
I think linking the US with Israel is one mistake we have been doing for the past 20 to 30 years. More. The center of power, it's like what he mentioned, what Ayman mentioned about the purity of the revolution purity. We have to understand the structure of powers. America is the biggest power, and the Israelis know that very well, and they use that to lobby, to influence this great power. We have to see it as it is. On the question of whether we're replacing one influence with the other, I think it's up to us. If the Americans right now is telling both sides of the spectrum, the anti-Hezbollah camp and the Hezbollah camp, she's telling them both, you have to do what the IMF is asking for. So it's up to us what to do. Are we going to be connected with the international banking system or not? Are we going to restore trust or not? So it's up to us whether we stay in this collapse or move forward.
Question.
Daisy, it's good to see you. And Diana, it's good to see you too. Ayman, we never met, but we've spoken on the phone. I've quoted you in one of my articles for Al Monitor regarding what happened to Makram Raba, if you recall. Well, my question to you, sir, is you mentioned something about how we don't even have a story to explain what happened to the depositors' money. I mean, what's funny is that even Bernie Madoff, after what happened with his so-called business model, there was a paper trail that could trace back almost immediately after what happened. That's usually how Ponzi schemes work. So why haven't we, in your estimate, why we don't have that story, and when do you think we'll get one? That's the first question.
Yeah. Sehnaoui, at the time of the financial crisis, he went out on TV and he said, this is an exceptional situation. And the whole paradigm of how the political class dealt with the financial crisis is a state of exception, meaning the crisis did not happen. The government did not acknowledge that there was a crisis. This was an exceptional situation, and hence the $1 is equal 1,500 lira, and the rest is just exception. We're kicking the can. And that's why we didn't have an official statement, because an official statement from the government would mean that actually there is a crisis, and hence legally it would kick in a whole set of judicial aspects, which is the bankruptcy of the Lebanese banks, and the central bank has to intervene. So they maintained a lie, a blatant lie, through chaos. That's what and misinformation.
It's not a lie. It's a very simple economic solution to the crisis. Today, in reality, the financial crisis is resolved for the banks and for the banking system in the sense that the dual currency rate and the fact that you pay your losses through inflation was the choice. So it was a choice to actually socialize the losses and privatize the gain. It's a conscious choice to actually make sure that the most vulnerable pay for the richest one.
Yeah.
Even in terms of people who got loans and pay it back in Lebanese pounds. Yes, many of our friends who bought a small apartment benefited from it. But it's actually during exactly when Karim Said took over from Wasim Mansouri, on that day and only on that day, the central bank decided to end its subsidy for those who are paying back loans at the rate of 1,500. It seems that nearly $30 billion during that period of time were basically subsidized for extremely wealthy business people, including banks, who settled back the loans they got before the crisis at 1,500. So it means that whatever money from the depositors that was still left was used not only in the Ponzi schemes and the artificial maintaining of the peg or in corruption, but even during the crisis to subsidize those who had massive loans from the banking sector to pay them back at 1,500.
The banks liquidated in the process more than $50 billion. I'm not sure about the number now, but definitely more than $50 billion of savings of Lebanese depositors. And on top of that, they shifted about $16 billion to the central bank, which now is going to be considered that it requires recapitalization. So they practically liquidated, they transferred and we published in Badil a great piece about the shadow financial plan, which set in like you have to read that. It sets in which articles and how it was done legally and financially. They engineered this shadow financial plan. But this is a shadow financial plan. It's never stated in public. In public, it's like there isn't. Yeah, it's just it's actually the problem with Daraj. Daraj is the problem why the financial crisis happened.
Let me move ahead. Do you have another question? Because I want to get around the room.
One last quick question. Yeah, so there's also this topic of Puritans, which I think, no disrespect to anyone that identifies as a Puritan, but I think it's just lazy politics, because at the end of the day, if you can't get things done, what's the point of having this rosy ideology that may not be sincerely held anyway?
And look at what happened at every single election in the world where Puritans prevented moderates from winning.
Can we give the microphone to Doug?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Douglas George Alexander. I'm originally from New York. We're Greek and Lebanese, and I've been volunteering and living here now for 3 years as a clinical psychologist. To you, so I'm proposing a statement to what you had said earlier before I make my statement. If you really want to see the face of the devil, you look at Trump and George Soros. It's as simple as that. These two gentlemen have absolutely no ambitions, nothing except felonious and duplicitous ideas for this country. That's number two. Number three, what I've learned in this country, and I say this with the most humble respect, you five are speaking so eloquently about the financial crisis, about what comes next, the next chapter. What I've learned as someone who was born and raised in the States, the mental health situation in this country is the scariest. I have been blessed by Almighty God. Probably 16, 17 countries I've had patients in the world, Brazil, Russia, etc. I've never seen anything like what's going on here. But what has taught me to understand your people, because like I said, before 3 years I never lived here, I have succeeded with the utmost respect for everybody. I don't get involved in political alienations or religious alienations, but what has taught me to be successful, with my respect, is understanding why people different than myself, why they think the way they think. And having been able to learn that, it has taught me so much in my time here that, forgive me, the financial banking crisis is a huge mistake. It's a huge problem. It's a cancer. The problem with your neighbors to the south, unfortunately, is another huge problem. The only success, I guess, Daisy, you've called me an ajnabi, the only success is the people within this country waking up, eventually. No one is better than anyone. Forgive me, friends. I don't care your status. I don't care your religion. I don't care where you're Lebanese. You must. The only path forward is to somehow work together. We do it in America. We do it, we fail, but we make a concerted attempt. But one of the biggest problems that I see, and yeah, I pray all day long. I'm not gonna lie, that's me, works personally for me. I pray for the kids, because I don't know what's gonna happen to the demographics of 25 years and younger. They're the next generation. Inshallah, that they should come out of this craziness with a stable mindset, because they will be at this table in 10 years. And they don't wanna have to be dealing with the same problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Ghanem. I'm a master's student at the Lebanese University studying law. Also, I work at a law firm and the Ministry of Social Affairs. My question for you all, if we really accept that rules, it's not my own question, it's what Lebanese people are asking now. If we really accept that rules, that the traditional media are really have their own agenda, what prevent also an alternative media from having their own agenda? And the question about funds, it's really true. I hope one day we will have really a discussion and a great debate between the alternative media and the traditional media. That will be a great debate, and thank you.
We'll try. We'll try. That's a great question. Thank you very much.
I mean, the funding issue is something we announce, we debate. The funding is not a crime. The crime is when you hide your money, where your money is coming from. When you apply for application, when you have accountant, when you have financial files that are clear. And when you, in our press conference last week, we said it and we stand by it, that we are ready to disclose our financial accounts personally and for Daraj. Will the mainstream media, will MTV, will those who stand behind those campaigns accept to do the same? And I think this is something everybody should talk about. Yes, funding is a key issue, is a key problem. You can judge us by what we publish and what we claim for. And you have the full right. If we publish something that is not, and you have to differentiate between facts, figures, information, and opinion. When you mix these two, when you just give opinions and slander, this is something else. When somebody comes from any media outlets, say anything about me, I don't mind. But when they say that I have stolen the Lebanese money, they have to prove it.
Yes.
Well, when we published about bankers, we have proved it. When we published investigations about Riyad Salemi, it was backed by files, by evidences. And they could not challenge us with evidences. They tried to attack us, to discredit us for the funding. And the funding, we are transparent about it. And the government knows about it. We are a registered company. Our accounts are legal. And we are ready to disclose it to any judiciary department. We are asking others to do the same. And I think this is a rightful question. Let's have an open discussion about funding. Where is it coming from, and what does it serve?
What about his first question?
Simple proposal to the entire media sector. There is something global today in the world, similarly to ISO when it comes to management or to industry. It's called JTI, Journalism Trust Initiative. It's about a series of indicators related to transparency of ownership, of funding, of editorial policies, of anti-discrimination policies that are very simple, that are public, and I'm very happy to explain them in details in another setup. Very easy. It's like we require answers to these questions to be made public, and most importantly, there are international audit firms who would come and audit your answers. If you pass, you get a JTI certificate, similarly to you got your ISO 9000 or etc. Today, every single media outlet in Lebanon is invited, and I'm inviting all of them, to apply to the JTI certification. There are some that already have started their process. L'Orient Le Jour has, Al-Rawiya has. I'm inviting every single other one to do it. Some of the big international broadcasters, CBC in Canada and others, are JTI certified. Amman Net in Jordan is JTI certified. Let's all be JTI certified.
Okay, go back to his first question. If we're saying the traditional media has an agenda, doesn't the alternative or independent
thank
media
God they have an agenda, which is an agenda of accountability.
Go.
An agenda where amnesty and amnesia is the rule. It's good to have the agenda that is the exact opposite.
Like when Badil started, we were carrying cardboards in the square in 2019 when the demonstrations to explain to people basics of political economy, because the people didn't understand what happened, because nobody was answering that. And this is how Badil actually started. Badil started as an alternative in the sense of okay, we need to explain to the people the fundamentals of economy. And I think we're proud of the fact that, no, we want to shape the agenda. And I think that now the whole, what is happening in Lebanon is that they're pushing back because again, the change movement has an agenda, and the agenda is clear. They state it every day, which is more transparency. We need a just resolution for the financial crisis. It's the position that everybody knows. And so we're not, we definitely have an agenda. And I think those who say they don't have an agenda, they basically have an agenda of the oligarchs, because it's chaos. It's just like name calling. That's what we don't have. No, we're clear about where we want to take, or debate, if you want.
And you could, I guess, also, if anyone's looking for it, look at the mission and vision of your organisations, which is published on, what you stand for. So that should be clear about the agenda. But any other questions? Yes, Tadda.
First of all, thank you all for your insights today. The fight on alternative media that brought us here together is nothing new. It's a déjà vu, summoning people for investigation, for interrogations, etc. And it feels like it's been going on for a while. It feels like alternative media and mainstream media are stuck in a match where alternative media has its back against the ropes the whole time. So my question is there ever going to be some sort of joint task force that coordinates, defense and attacks on those power of authority that are fighting the alternative media? Because like Ayman said, in the end, we do need tough talking points for those candidates that we are all looking to support in 2026. So, yeah, that's my question.
Really cool.
I think what this fight, the one positive outcome of this fight is bringing us together as early as, 1 year ahead of the elections. This is unprecedented.
Lebanon.
This is unprecedented.
It's like a few months.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So it's happening, man.
Anyone else? Okay. Taddali.
I'm Gladys Nader. I'm part of the diaspora. It happened that I'm in Lebanon, and I'm happy to be here. I love the idea of having alternative media. I'm not someone who's following a lot the politics. And what I would love to see also in Lebanon, alternative media, not only for the politics, but also for the culture. And by culture, it's not only the festivals and the music, because we are so good in that. And it's part of our good side that we know how to party, but it's also like everybody is asking if I'm coming back to Lebanon. And I always saying like, I wish that I'm gonna have here the same opportunities that I'm having in Paris in art sectors. So are you considering also this side of the story that's gonna help also the people?
She's talking to the right person.
In a sense, look, a few names. L'Agenda Culturelle is one of the absolute must-follow organizations. Roots and Heritage, absolutely. But I'm talking even about the cultural activities. L'Orient Le Jour has a coverage of, the cultural life that's amazing. And facts. Today, if you're a theater troupe and you have a new play, to actually book a theater in Lebanon is almost impossible because of the queue. Today, there is a revival of the theater scene thanks to people like Yahya Jaber, like Isam Abu Khalid, like Lina Abyad, absolutely. It is like it's full house every day. They had to move from small theaters to the Casino du Liban, and it's full house. The music festivals are not only the big ones, but you have even in who a few years ago knew about Les Musicales de Baghdad, other than the people who lived in Baghdad. Today, it's with the Bustan and Beirut Chants, the top 3 classical music festivals in the Middle East. So it is a thriving sector, which doesn't necessarily get a lot of media coverage, but you know what? It doesn't anywhere. Except probably in France, where, and not on every single French TV, but specifically the state-owned French TV kind of cover more the cultural life because it's the state. But, this is one of the sources of pride in Lebanon, and if there is one thing that can fill the agenda of any tourist this summer is culture.
Okay, great, but how can the diaspora also help in bringing more the culture of, not only the culture of the abroad here, but also what we have here abroad, because it's also important. Like, it's
money.
One of the money. It's
money.
Again,
it's
the
funding
funding and the...
Yeah.
It's not so high on the agenda right now, but it's definitely something we should be pushing. But it's very important. Obviously, in Western cultures, art and culture is hugely funded. Tremendous amount of money goes into sponsoring the arts. And so we're not quite there. And I know it is something that it irks artists here, but we need to take one step at a time and get there. You had a question?
No, I just wanted to mention some of our activities at the BSF.
Yeah, for example, the Beirut Spring Festival is a free entrance annual festival that we organize every year. This year, it will include a major play related to war memory in Lebanon, to the conflictual relationship between Lebanese and Syrians, but who are both victims of the same regime. It will include a photo exhibition. It will include art installations across the city. It will include walking tours of the city. It starts, the exact date will soon, but actually around mid-May to the end of June. But yeah, I actually specifically avoided to do any kind of self-promotion on this show.
That's okay. The diaspora might,
get in touch.
Take more serious the opportunity to come to Lebanon because it's next to. Do we have any other questions? Taddali. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not Lebanese, I'm a foreigner. I just moved back to Lebanon. I was living here in 2020 and 2021, 2 very harsh years in this country. And first of all, I really enjoyed all of you talking. I've been missing these moments and these occasions in Lebanon since I moved here in 2020. And my question goes to mainly about the protection of these free voices. I agree with Ralph about naming all these, instead of elites or even oligarchies, as cartel. I believe as a Latin woman, actually, it's very accurate. But about the protection, because reading about Lebanese history, many voices, and you've named few, have been shut down by these cartels, and despite of the side that the cartel they belong to, right? So how nowadays you promote more free voices in this country, more of these instances, more of these occasions in which people gather, and at the same time you can, I mean, not you exactly, but which would be it's either the legal background or framework that could help them, how to invest in promoting these instances, but at the same time giving security to people. I believe it's very important, considering not only the moment that Lebanon is today, but also because of the history that it has.
Thank you. We missed your name.
Sorry, Estefania.
And you're from which country?
Chile.
Chile. Great to have you with us. Thank you for your question.
I think solidarity is key when it comes to protection. And we've seen it like yesterday when we had our questioning at the Adliye. And we saw it was not a huge, but it was caliber. When you look at what it represents in terms of change MPs, in terms of NGOs, international institutions, media syndicates, all those who came represent the civil society that is very active in Lebanon. And I think besides the judiciary, besides the legal system, besides some politicians should be really more vocal about protecting those independent voices, I think people who think like us, the solidarity between us is key to show these voices and to defend such a narrative.
Yeah, definitely. And creating more opportunities like this where we can come together and give the space to the public to speak and join and get things off their chest too. Because if we're going through this, you can imagine what younger journalists or people getting thinking about this space in the media are worrying about, and how do they navigate these against huge forces that we're talking about. But I guess opening up more opportunities like this to bring people in and listen to them too would be amazing. Thank you for your question, Stephanie. Any other questions? Okay, on that note, I really want to thank you all for joining us. You first in the audience. The supporters are the most important, the people listening and watching us on TV, but you guys who joined us today and your questions, your presence is extremely valuable to all of us because we work to serve you, in all honesty. So we're very grateful that you're here. But so great to meet you all. Thank you very much for being so candid.
Thank you for having us. It was really a pleasure to be part of this discussion.
Thank you very much, Diana. Being honest, being candid, and demonstrating what we all know, but hoping that others have witnessed it, that we've got nothing to hide, that we are trying to work for Lebanon and uphold our responsibilities as journalists and do what is called upon us to do. So thank you all for joining me today. Thank you again, Nizar, to Badil for co-sponsoring. Thank you, BDD, for this space. It's a wonderful space. Unfortunately, if you can, see the beautiful Great Mosque of Beirut behind us. It was too bright before, but thank you very much again, everyone, for joining us. Signing off. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and experiencing firsthand the real stories told by real people. I hope you found value and meaning and encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Your ongoing financial support is vital to our ability to continue delivering these stories, so please remember to click on the donate button in the description, giving only what you can afford. I spent my whole life giving my time, money and skill to serve human rights and social justice causes, and I know it's not easy to keep giving selflessly. But this work is important because the mainstream media has failed to live up to their obligations. So we need to step up, speak up, or we're no better than them. I believe by tuning in to this podcast, you are someone who wants to know the facts and the truth, so you can independently decide what to believe and what not to. My job is to deliver that information. Yours is to place a value on it. Whatever you decide is humbly welcome. Thanks again, and see you on the next episode of Real Talk.